Hello and welcome to another episode of Data Delicacies, where we bring the best and brightest in the industry to talk all things data, talk all things tech, talk all things hospitality. So I have a very, very special guest here today, someone that is a very close friend of mine, and we've worked together for many, many years. The one and only Stacey Sikorski. Stacey, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Arun.
Great to have you on the show. So as you all know, the show is powered and hosted by Incentivio. I run the show myself. My name is Arun, and Stacey is our head of sales here at Incentivio, and we've actually had some great history together working. So before we kind of jump into our discussion, I'd love for you to just share with the audience a little bit about your story. Talk about the path, and you've had a long time in hospitality, which it's a really cool story. So why don't you share with the audience kind of your story of where you started and how you got to Incentivio today?
Yeah, sure. I have been working in or with restaurants for 25 years. I feel like I only recently, in the last probably decade, connected the dots in me actually wanting to know that restaurants are the people that I want to work with and that I work best with. It started out by, as one does through college years, having a job at the Keg Steakhouse and Bars, where I worked for about 8 years off and on. I think that just really,
you got to tell people, a lot of our audience here is from the US. So when you say the keg, they don't know. Right. I brought up the keg so many times and everyone's like, the who? They think it's like I'm talking out of a keg, right? So
it's a glorious Canadian steakhouse where consistency is their thing. You can go to any keg across Canada, order the same thing, and you will have the same exact experience at any one. It was a wonderful place to work. I still have tons of great friends from there. Worked there off and on, and I think that was just where my understanding of the restaurant, how it functions, came to be. It was also a franchise location, so I learned a lot about how a franchise organization runs. When corporate people would come to our team, we might have to do things a little bit differently when the corporate team is in-house. That was where my initial love of restaurants happened, and just being in that environment. I've done a lot of different things, did consumer packaged goods in alcohol beverage for years, sold radio advertising in hospitality vertical. But it wasn't until I was a little bit bored in my consumer packaged goods role. They had made some changes in terms of distributing out their sales. The same caliber of people weren't being hired. So I was just open to a new opportunity. I had a friend screenshot and send me a position of a client success manager at a company called 7 Shifts. And I thought to myself, I know absolutely nothing about tech, but I know a lot about restaurants and managing relationships with clients and sales. So I had actually known one of the co-founders. So I sat down with her and just asked her what this would look like. I ended up saying yes to that position and joined as the 11th employee back in 2016. You wear a lot of hats when you're at initial startups, and tech is a new industry, but restaurant tech is even more new. So there was a lot of things that even if I wanted to find information about on Google from other companies was very limited. So it was really just figuring out a lot of collaborating and talking to everyone and really insane about customer feedback and making our product better. I had a hand in building 4 different revenue facing teams there. Really learned so much about selling specifically to restaurateurs, but also about what restaurants need. And some of my favorite thing in life is just to be at a restaurant, eating a good meal, surrounded by good people. And so I want to use my energy to help make their lives better, because they go through a lot to be able to get to that moment that I love so much. We've enjoyed a lot of meals together, Arun, and you know how happy I am when I sit down with my plate of food and good people.
Yes. Especially when we get our espresso martinis, of course.
So that taught me so much, because I had spent so much time working with restaurants. In the restaurant tech space, I was very much known as Stacey at 7 Shifts. So when I was approached by Incentivio last spring, I really saw the opportunity for myself it was a hard place to leave and a hard decision to make, but I saw the opportunity for myself to grow in my career path, but also learn about the guest engagement side of the industry. I also have a BCom in marketing, so can kind of tie that back in.
Yeah. Nice. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, big shout out to Michael Addison who brought us all together. And yeah, just it's funny how things work, right? And you talk about hospitality experiences. I always think back, and I know you just chatted with our good friend Sean Brennan over at Q, and I still remember that dinner that we had at RFDC. Is one of my favorite moments in this industry, but one of my favorite dining experiences ever, right? We had, our team, we brought Sean and we had Brad Bertram over from Razzie,
Yeah.
and at Carbone, and that was I think we probably sat there for like 4 or 5 hours just chatting, and it was probably one of the we always look back and one of my favorite hospitality experiences just in the industry, but just overall dining experiences I've had.
Yeah. Totally couldn't agree more. That experience is the reason why Carbone is my favorite restaurant.
Yeah. Yes. And the hospitality is
Mhm.
unbelievable. So, we worked together at Seven just for years, which very much was a back of house company, right? So kind of team management, everything behind the
Yeah.
scenes. And then coming over to Incentivio, completely different side of the coin, right? So it's definitely been a learning curve, I think, for both of us, learning, especially with all the things that Incentivio does, and definitely being more of a front of house platform. So, how did you take on that challenge of learning it, and what excites you the most about kind of being on the front of house side versus the back of house tech?
Yeah. I think initially when I had sat down with Jordan Bush, the CEO of Seven Chefs, and he showed me the vision for the product, my experience in working with restaurants at the Keg, me managing my schedule or having to switch shifts with people was literally the worst part of my job. You had to physically come to the restaurant, look at the names, call everyone. You couldn't call the manager to figure it out because they would just get mad at you for trying to switch a shift. So I saw the value initially and was like, oh my God, every single restaurant has to have this. So when Incentivio approached me, understanding the product was a very big part of my decision. I asked a lot of questions before I came in. I wanted to make sure that we had the right team in place to be able to handle customers long term. My reputation is really important to me, and I'm not somebody that's going to get somebody into something that I don't believe is going to solve a problem or reach a goal. So I saw the benefits in how what I saw through COVID was all of these little tech companies spinning up due to needs and restaurateurs jumping on solutions that they just were looking for anything to help them through those horrible times. So what happened was these tech stacks grew completely out of control, and I saw a big, huge play for consolidation in those tech stacks with Incentivio and how comprehensive it is. So I felt like I could use my energy to really support restaurants there in letting them know that they can reduce those monthly fees and continue to operate more efficiently with lean teams. In terms of the learning curve of the product, I actually see a lot of similarities in
Hmm.
both Seven Shifts and Incentivio in terms of like we're heavily integrated. So a lot of the same partners that I worked with at Seven Shifts, I'm working again with at Incentivio. Some people that I haven't worked with in 5 years, I'm working with again, which is so great. Um, I think the biggest learning curve was that we didn't have to deal with processing fees and purchases at Seven Shifts. And that's like a whole nother world
Yeah.
here. I'm still learning. So that's probably been the biggest learning curve. But I also love falling back on really the basics that I learned in marketing. I mean, you go to college to eventually use your degree, but I would say my career path didn't really bring that in until
Yeah.
recently. Yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, you talk about the vision and what Jordan sold you at Seven Shifts and what was sold here. Like, what excites you most about what is what is the potential, what we could achieve here at Incentivio, over the next few years?
Mhm. Yeah. I think if our world's moving more digital. So I think that if I'm a guest and I try to put myself in that person's shoes. So if I'm a guest and I'm downloading an app and all of that, I would say it has to be fluid and it has to be speaking to me. So, or else I'm just going to delete the app off my phone. Like if something's not valuable to me, it's not there. I mean, who does the best loyalty app probably ever is the premier, probably Starbucks. The reason Incentivio exists is so the brands that are not Starbucks are able to compete with the Starbucks of the world. But my Starbucks app is really important to me because Starbucks knows who I am. I have offers that come to me based on what I've ordered before. I have offers that come to me based on what other people around me are ordering or what the seasonal feature is within my market. So I think that that was what I saw in Incentivio is like, whoa, our world's moving more digital. People talk about computers stealing our jobs and robots stealing our jobs, but I'm like, please take the jobs so that humans can do other things. And automating menial tasks that you do multiple times a day is one of those things. So being able to automate, set and forget it, and then know that your guests are taken care of in a digital world in the same way that you would take care of them if they came into your store.
Yeah, I love that. I think, we're almost like we're like the real-time beta test for any of the stuff, right? Because we go to restaurants often, we travel a lot and we see all these different things. And it's like, how can we incorporate the best of all of that into what we're trying to help restaurateurs with? And I think I was chatting about this with I guess yesterday on the show, and we talk about the tech is there, right? It's just how do we take that tech and then funnel in a way that we can come up with the vision that we're all thinking about. So we're talking about Incentivio. Let's take kind of a step back in the overall industry. We do a lot of the road shows together, right? We're racking up all those Aeroplan points. With all these shows and what you're seeing and
Sky Miles for Americans.
Sky Miles, there you go. Yeah. So with all of the, with all the shows you're going to and all the customers that you're talking to, what are some of the biggest trends that you're seeing? And, how much of it excites you? How much of it scares you? Love to get a sense of of what you've been hearing over the last little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I am so grateful to be in this industry from when I feel like this industry was starting. So now from like an industry connections perspective and the people we see, we've known these people for years and we get to partner with these people that we meet as friends and trust to be able to connect different parties throughout that network that you and I have. So in terms of some of the trends I'm seeing, it seems like every tech company is sticking AI on their banner. Whatever we do it with AI. We do it with AI. Right now, that will be taken by people and they think that they understand AI, but that's not what it is. It's really cool when you go to the shows and you see maybe tech companies that are showing AI and we know because we use AI in our product that they don't have AI in their product. So that's a little bit of a false, it's kind of what we saw with COVID, and a lot of these tech companies spun up and the tech wasn't great. They were sometimes maybe trying to take advantage of the restaurateurs and that opportunity that COVID presented them. And so you go to the show, like we saw that one booth, they had like an AI guy speaking to you to like take your order, which I'm like, that is true AI. And I personally think that's great in terms of like having people at the cash that are AI people taking your orders. And then the real people can be the people greeting the people and providing that hospitable experience. But the scary part of it that I don't like is that restaurateurs, I want them to be able to trust the people that they're working with, which more so amplifies the backbone of hospitality, which I feel like we'll always go back to in trusting and working with people. The AI part is a little bit unknown to all of us right now, and we don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know how it's going to manifest into our world fully. But that's definitely a massive topic of conversation right now. When we were at 7 Shifts through the COVID times and all of that, the most competitive part of the industry and the most important part of the industry at that time was labor and inventory. People had tons of inventory problems, tons of labor problems. That's what people needed solutions for. Now we're coming out of that. And I mean, you told me to move away and step back from the picture, but I say that loyalty is the number one most competitive thing right now. People are trying to figure out how to provide that personalized experience digitally when I feel like the digital world right now is still learning how to cater to individuals. So we're all kind of figuring it out together.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think is fine. I think there's still a lot of space for someone to, I think, really rechange the way loyalty is looked at. Because I think to your point, the more tech we have, the more personalized and humanized we want things to be, right?
Yeah.
And a quick question here is, I mean, love your kind of thoughts there. And you talk about how, you saw the AI person at the show and you wouldn't mind being treated with an AI bot at a restaurant or whatever. You have two young kids, right? What are their ages?
10 and 7.
10 and 7. Like, how did they, I mean, do you feel like they are, growing up in a world where like there's so much tech, right? Like, I grew up in a world where like when the first Game Boy came out, I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this is the greatest thing on the planet. Now it's like, we have this. But, how do they, like, what are their thoughts on tech overall? Like, do you feel like as they grow up, like that's going to be commonplace for them where it's like, hey, it's a kiosk or a AI person versus like seeing a real person, like, what is this?
Yeah. I mean, already my son's big into video games. He sees like AI all the time and is able to distinguish between those two. It's just really just a part of their world. Like they're growing up with tech. I think it's fun that I can remind them of like how it was when I was a kid and that I had to call my friend's house and their parents answered the phone and then I had to ask for my friend rather than just being able to like message them on my personal device. So there's those different things, but my son really wants to be like a video game developer when he grows up. And I
Cool.
said to him, yeah, that's really cool. And I think he'd be really smart and great at it. But I said to him the other day, I'm like, with AI and the way that things are going in the world, I don't know that the job that you're envisioning for yourself is actually going to exist when you get there. So there's going to be a lot of things changing within our world. And it's about like I guess just kind of teaching them about the pros and the cons of it, just like anything else within the world. It's a big hole, but it's also like there's been a lot of great things about our the global digitization period in
Yeah.
terms of like what we can learn from other people across the world. Even something as simple as like dancing. Like you
Yes.
look at dancing of people when they were without technology and now you look at young kids dancing today, you're like, wow, they're so good, like way better than we could have ever been. But
Oh
that's
yeah.
because they're exposed to so much.
Well, I think TikTok is the best dance instructor there is out there. I see kids doing all this crazy stuff, and it's yeah, it's funny you mention that because I think it's exciting, but also somewhat scary. It's like, what does the world look like? And it's so much harder, I think, to predict the future in the global scale of things, but also if you look at hospitality, like what does the next 5 to 10 years look like when it comes to tech, right? Like, I
Mhm.
think I use ChatGPT as a perfect example where, a year ago, I used ChatGPT quite often, but I remember like a year ago, even 18 months ago, I'd ask people like, hey, do you use ChatGPT? Some people didn't know what it was. Some people were like, no, never. And now with the new iOS update, ChatGPT, like OpenAI is part of it, which is crazy, right? You go and even in Google, they have Gemini search. Like it's crazy to see how it's like
Yeah,
fully incorporated in day to day versus like a year ago, everyone's like, huh, who? This is like scary. What is
I
this stuff?
know.
Yeah.
It's moving so fast, so
Yeah.
fast. But I
No,
think if we stick to the place of like taking the things that are easy to compile or timely, like tasks that take up a lot of time, and then apply AI to those informationally as well, then we're in a good spot. It's just, there's a lot of unknown there, and some people can do like wrong things, but let's stay on the positive side of AI.
yes. Yeah. I know it's always like the Skynet Terminator thing, right? That's the first place people's mind to go to. But I think there's a lot of good that could be done, and I think a lot of problems will like be solved with tech. And hopefully that's kind of where we end up in the next few years. But time will tell. But I try to be an optimist as best I can.
Yeah.
Cool. So I appreciate all your thoughts on kind of the industry. I want to kind of switch topics here for a bit. So, you've had your rise in multiple different companies and taken on multiple different roles. Now you're our director of sales here. You're a member of our executive team, and I just want to talk about. I've always felt that there's sometimes a lack of inclusion and diversity in our space, right? So as a female leader, a very strong female leader, a very successful female leader, we'd love to get your thoughts on how you see the industry today and what you'd like to maybe see as time goes on.
Mm-hmm. A big part of what I do provides a lot of, like, I'm very passionate about the restaurant industry, but I also do what I do because I know that there's a lack of female representation within what I do. So I try to position myself as an example for other people to see that it's possible. That was a big part of the reason why I joined Incentivio as well. There was a lot of male leadership on the team, and I wanted to come be a part of changing that.
Yeah. No,
Mhm.
and again, I think that's awesome, and it's great to see. I think it's happening more and more in the industry now, and I love to see it, right? Because I think there's so much talent out there, and so much
Yeah.
female talent, and so much diverse talent out there, and it's great to see more and more of that happening across the industry.
Yeah, and I'll give a shout out to my girl Lydia Sue at Toast, because one dinner we went to years ago, we walked into the room and we were the only females, and there was a bunch of middle-aged white men in the room, and we were there for a fancy dinner. And it was the first time I was meeting her in person, but we had talked before. Sat down beside her, and she looked at me and she goes, "This is why we got to keep doing what we're doing." And I was
Mhm.
like, "Yeah." And we always think about that moment together. We've had similar paths.
No, love that. Yeah, big shout out to Leia. She's obviously a legend in the industry and doing
Mhm.
her thing over in the UK now. So, and which we're hoping to officially make some moves over there soon as well. But no, I'd love to hear that, Stace, and continue to keep doing what you're doing, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that you inspire by your work. And obviously, as a very close friend, it's awesome to see you killing it as always and getting the recognition you deserve. So, um,
Yes.
so you talked about the Starbucks app, which I think many listeners here will probably have, or some sort of app. And I'd love to kind of really dive into, because we both are part of Incentivio, and we live in this day in, day out. I mean,
Hmm.
outside of like maybe Starbucks or hospitality, what are some of the best apps you've seen, or best loyalty programs you've seen that truly get you to come back over and over again? And do you think we could learn from other industries and incorporate that better into hospitality or just
Oh,
restaurants?
yeah. I mean, other industries, just restaurants. I think I think that McDonald's actually has a really interesting approach to loyalty, where you pull up and they ask you your 4-digit code to apply your loyalty program, so they don't have to scan anything,
Mm,
which seems like someone like McDonald's would do something more like automated like that and not have to have their cashiers asking the person for their code, but like McDonald's is doing it. So like they're being more creative in terms of how they're doing it. Maybe their tech isn't where they want it to be yet, but they've really enforced a really clean process there. And that is probably one of the biggest things in terms of get your people at your restaurant excited about your program and excited about your brand, because they are your biggest advocates in getting the word out there.
mm,
Whereas it's kind of some brands will have like a build it and they will come mentality, which is not always the best. Outside of the restaurant industry, I think that, I mean, loyalty probably I don't know the exact history, but I'm assuming it stemmed from like credit card companies, flight companies. Like that's where we know the backbone of loyalty to be. And we've kind of brought it into other industries. This is what I think about when we're going into the future. There's so much opportunity to get creative with what we do with it. We've kind of taken the points mentality through because of the credit card companies that created that culture. So there's a lot more we can do in being like creative and flexible. In Canada, there is I mean, it was just the Shoppers Drug Mart. It's like a Walgreens essentially app. And then they were purchased. So they were acquired. And now they have like the PC Optimum app.
yeah,
I am so loyal to that program. I have gotten thousands of dollars in free groceries.
it's pretty good.
And
Yeah,
it's
we use
all
it
like
too. It's great.
Yeah, every week I'm like, ooh, what can I get extra of? What points am I going to get? Like they've
Yeah.
really locked me in there. And then the fun thing is that they're sending me emails of like, hey, here's how much you saved. You got this many points from these extra things. And they give me a roll up of my data. So I really like that from that approach. And then I mean, airlines, like I'm so loyal to my airline now because of that status that I
Yeah.
am willing to take a connection when I don't need to do a connection just so that I can get my WestJet points.
Yeah. The airline one is interesting, right? Most people bring that up because, a lot of us in hospitality, we travel a lot or just even for personal life. I mean, myself, but I also look at it as a sense of like, there's not much optionality in especially in Canada. I mean, I think just across, like,
Yeah.
there's a much smaller pool of people, and you kind of have to play that game to get there. But, I find it interesting with airlines where it's like, the price of stuff, like, especially, I use Air Canada, and just the price of flights has gone up an insane amount. But even if I pay, and they obviously use like surge pricing, which is an interesting thing in the restaurant industry because like airlines, Amazon, a lot of places have been doing surge pricing for years and years, and we've been okay with it. But within airlines, like, sometimes some of our flights to Vegas or Boston or wherever we go are like pretty expensive relatively, but
Mhm.
the service is the same. Like, especially
Or
Air Canada, which is
worse.
not the greatest. Yeah, like, again, I'm not trying to hate any Canada, but just examples. It's like, they still, I've had status and they still make me do like they'll make me size my suitcase. And I'm like, I fly like once a week, twice, like, twice, 2 times a month. Why you make me go to the song and dance? So I think that's where sometimes the missing piece for me on the airline side
Hmm.
is that, right? But
Yeah.
I think that's the big piece where I hear from the restaurants that we work with is from the loyalty perspective, it's not just the points or the discounts or the BOGO or whatever. It's now something about that person. How do you create that human connection? Because I think
Yes.
Marriott does an extremely good job at this, where every time I go to a Marriott, right away, hello, Mr. Kumar, thank you for
Yes.
coming. Thank you for your loyalty. Hey, I noticed you're this member. Hey, don't worry, we're gonna get you upgraded. We're gonna early check, like, all I without me having to say a single word, which I think is just
Yeah.
that's just even just them acknowledging my name and saying thank you for your loyalty is huge, right? Versus like I feel like sometimes I have a pretty high status with Air Canada, and it's like I get, and not to say you should get treated differently, but like it's like I'm the same as someone who's like maybe flying for the first time. There's like no difference to them, which
Hmm.
that as I find is a frustrating piece. But because they have the monopoly on it, they can afford to almost do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that knowing your top tier guests, and you mentioned like not being treated differently. I think you should be treated differently, not in a way of like human kindness in terms of like, hey, welcome to our place, come
Yeah.
on in terms of like access to different things you get. So, like,
Yeah.
do I, as a top tier loyal customer of yours, get an invite to a special wine tasting event you're having tonight or something? Like, I'm a top tier customer of Aritzia and I get a text for their special sale. Well, only top tier customers are able to get into that sale. So things like that, making it more special, surprise and delight, and making them feel like they're valued and an individual to you. So yeah,
Yeah.
totally agree.
I think the experiential piece and the exclusivity piece is big, right? Because I'm not saying like they should be like bow down to me and then kick everybody else and then give a shit. Like, that's not what I'm
Yeah.
saying. But it's more, hey, listen, I spend a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of my travel with you. It's like just a hello, just something would go a long way.
Yeah.
But to your point, like, I'm a big fan of the brand Kith, and they have a loyalty program where, based on your tier, they do certain drops that only you get access to if you're in that tier. And if you're not in that
Mm.
tier, you just can't buy the thing. And obviously,
Oh
the
yeah.
higher tier, the nicer the stuff is. But I think I've talked to some of the brands that I've talked to on the show. They've talked about, or some of the other vendors, they've also talked about how I think that experiential, creating like an experience where it's like, hey, listen, if you're a top tier member, we're actually going to do this like new item kind of like buffet thing. Come by and try it out and be part of our community, which I think that's a cool thing. Then you feel like, oh, it's just me. Like, it's just pretty special. I get to meet other people that love this thing as much as,
Yeah.
yeah. And you can,
Maybe even like you're just, and I think of like surprise and delight. Like, let's say you're just like sitting at home one night, you get a text from your favorite restaurant that says, hey, are you home right now? You respond yes. They're like, we're going to deliver a whatever on the house for you. And you're
Yeah.
like sitting at home and then you get this free meal because you're a loyal customer and they know who you are and they know where you live. Like
Yeah.
that would be a really cool experience. And I think
Yeah.
we can get there. We're almost there to that. But yeah, definitely like understanding your guests. If you think about it, it's really just going back to the basics of like your local neighborhood pub. Like you go
Yes.
there every day, you are treated differently. They know you, they welcome you by name. You come in, you don't even have to order. They give you your favorite drink.
The
Like
usual.
those
Yeah.
types of
Yeah. Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's harder to understand that individual and digital world. But if you have the right data to do it, then you can do it.
Yeah. Completely agree. Is there, as we're about to wrap up here, is there anything you wanted to bring up specifically from your side? I know you've been working with a lot of big customers and, you know, been here, you know, for quite some time now, but in the industry in general, anything specific that that's caught your eye that you'd love to share with the audience?
Yeah, no, I think I would just speak to how I really appreciate the brands getting savvier. Like I think back to the days of when I started at Seven Shifts when like I could have the most savviest person on the call and I was still breaking things down as if it was something that I had never looked at before. But now even post COVID, like it forced brands into tech for that. And now they're coming out of that and figuring out which pieces work best. So I did definitely feel like a pause in terms of buyers in the industry buying
Mm,
over the last 6 months. But I just kind of took that as like, okay, we did this, we blew up, we now have to get our bearings in order and we need to take our time and be intentional with the decisions we're making. So there's less like jumping on a shiny object and more like intentionality in, okay, what is this going to impact? Let's go through the whole sales process. I've also had to like do multiple sales in the past year where I'm first selling to consultants or people that are vetting it out before we get to the brand. And then by that time, they've done the work to vet it out on something that maybe the restaurateur doesn't know everything about, come back in. And then from there, it's just been like, oh, this is a much cleaner, easier, cooler sales process because that's already been vetted and they understand the needs of the business coming into that with me.
yeah, no, I love that.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the stuff I've heard from guests on the show is that there's a bit of a divide, right? In the sense of like what operators know, what operators need, but also just like this, there's so much tech out there. And then, you know, vendors, you talk about AI and all this stuff, like we're just throwing out all these like
Yeah.
acronyms and like, oh, we do have machine learning and this and that, versus almost a bridge in the gap. Like, how do you connect the two things? Like what we're actually trying to, like the ROI, what we're trying to do versus what the operators need. I mean, what do you say some of the key things that you do to help bridge that gap and educate your customers, especially for a product that's as complex as ours?
I think that first, obviously, in their mind, they're coming to us to solve a problem, or just learning what we're all about for understanding that for when those needs might come. I am very big on asking what the actual goals of the overall business are because our product is so complex and we touch a lot of different parts of the business. Like, yes, it's all guest management, but it does affect marketing, ops, IT, like field operations, a lot of
Yeah.
different things. So I need to know what their main goals are. And then we got to stick to those goals through the whole process. I mean, more revenue and less bills will always be a goal of restaurateurs. But
Yeah.
what are like the main goals of the year? And is Incentivio something that can align there? If not, I will make suggestions and point you on your path in the best way from my perspective. But if it does work, then I'm probably not, if I see it's a good opportunity and I know and understand, then I'm going to like connect you with ourselves, the people that will work with us, and then you'll have a really good ecosystem moving forward. But it's definitely
Love that.
about the hospitality and the trust.
Love that. I mean, yeah, I mean, you've obviously built, you know, a lot of good relationships throughout your time in the industry, and it's awesome to hear you share kind of what's worked, right? And I think it's just really hearing them out, being human, and creating that, coming with a hospitality mindset, not just like a tech mindset, which I think
Yeah.
sometimes that
And
gets
also
lost.
getting to just know them as people. Like
Yeah.
I just love people. So like I just genuinely want to understand them. And then, yeah, you see things that remind you of those people along the way. You cross paths again. And yeah, I'm
Yeah.
really proud of my network and my connections that I've built during this time.
Love that. Stace, we're coming up to towards the end here. So just want to wrap up with a quick lightning round. Going to throw a
Sure.
few questions at you. And first thing that comes to mind, let's hear it. So let's
Okay.
start. What's your current favorite cocktail of choice?
Ooh, spicy margarita.
Ooh.
I'm sorry, it's not an espresso martini right now.
No, no, it's okay. Are you a mezcal or are you just like a regular
I
like that?
do love mezcal. No, I do both, but if I had the option, mezcal for sure.
Is there a specific place where like that's your favorite one?
No,
The one at
there's
Javier's was good
not.
in Vegas.
Oh, actually, Delilah's.
I was gonna say
Yeah, the
Javier's or
Win spicy
Delilah's.
margarita. Yeah, Javier's is
Yes.
good too, but
Yeah.
Delilah's at the Win
Nice.
best spicy
Yeah.
margarita.
Nice. Lunch party or dinner party?
Dinner party because
Why?
I'm big on appies.
Oh, so you can't have appies at lunch?
It's not the same. I think of like a lunch party would be like sandwiches and salads and soups. Dinner parties like
That's super lame.
appetizers
Yeah,
and
yeah.
champagne glasses and candles.
Favorite Simpsons character?
Oh man, you're gonna hit me with that one. I actually don't know that I have one or have ever thought about this. Oh
Oh,
no.
you gotta give us something here.
You know what? Maybe Ralph. Because it's so random.
That's
As
good.
much
I
as
didn't think you were
feel
gonna say
bad for
Ralph.
him.
That's good. So just for everyone's context here, like Stace and I are like obsessed with The Simpsons. So like most of our jokes are Simpsons references. Most of our Slack conversation are just like Simpsons memes back and forth. So I had to
Yeah.
throw it. Like I'm the resident Bart, she's the resident Lisa. That's always been the running joke between us.
Yeah.
So
If
yeah.
one of us is waiting in a meeting for the other person, Millhouse is playing by
Yeah.
himself.
Millhouse Frisbee meme is out in full effect.
Yeah.
Uh, if you could shout out your favorite restaurant in Saskatoon, so you're based out of Saskatoon for all the
Oh.
listeners here. Favorite restaurant in Saskatoon and your favorite dish from that restaurant.
Oh, I love that question. My favorite restaurant is Primal. My friend Christy is the chef there. She's like a world-renowned chef. She's incredible. She has two restaurants here. Primal is my favorite, and I can't remember exactly what it's called, but their truffle pasta dish.
Mm,
Oh my God, I've only had that dish there and I can't get anything else because I feel like I'm going to miss out if I don't get that. So
yeah.
I only get that one there, but definitely. She used to have a restaurant called The Hollows. It was actually known that it was going to be short term because it was in a building that was not going to be available to be a building anymore. So it was only open for a couple years. But she had this Dutch pancake. I'm going to butcher the name. It's called like pannenkoeken or something.
Mm.
It's like a crepe with, oh my God, I still dream about that to this day. And she does brunch pop-ups at her other restaurant, Pop, where she serves this sometimes. So that dish, I'm hitting on both restaurants and giving you two dishes,
So in
but
that case, you're choosing
that's
brunch party. So if that's where you choose
yeah.
brunch party. Okay. Okay.
Mimosas.
Stace, thanks again for joining. You brought up a lot of cool stuff, which I want to quickly recap here, right? So you talk about, what excites you the most is this forever kind of like journey we have of like personalizing the guest experience, right? How can we make it as personalized as possible so people feel very uniquely attached to the brand? You talk about AI. There's so much AI in this industry, but like what is true AI versus like what actually works versus, what's the most practical stuff that operators are going to understand? Loyalty to you is one of the most competitive things right now. A lot of people have that top of mind because it is very competitive across all fronts. So how do you get people to come back, spend, give feedback and create that really good community? And, some of the keys of why you'll be able to succeed is just truly understanding the goals of the operator, right? So asking them those long-term questions. So we're not just offering like a Band-Aid solution. You're trying to be a long-term partner with them because I think you come across it with a very hospitality lens as opposed to just like, hey, I got to sell and move on. And more of a, some people have more of a transactional mind versus like a long-term hospitality mindset. So thank you for sharing, Stace. As always, it's great to chat. I mean, we chat plenty, but it's good for the audience here to kind of hear your thoughts and insights. Any last thoughts you want to share? And also, if folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, Stacey at Incentivio.com, Stacey. Or find me on LinkedIn. I also got Instagram, Stacey Loves Restaurants. So they can connect with me that way. But I think you did a pretty good recap and this was fun.
Awesome. Well, Stace, thanks again for joining. For all of you listening, thanks for tuning into Data Delicacies. Again, I'm your host, Arun Kumar. This is powered by Incentivio. We are looking for folks to still join the show, so please reach out to me directly just to chat all things tech. If you want to kind of vet out things beforehand, please reach out. But again, thanks for joining, Stacey. Thanks for being such an awesome guest. It's been a pleasure working with you. Look forward to seeing what you continue to do. And for all those listening, tune in next week for another episode.